You know, if you look at America in 1900 and then you look at it again in 1930, you'd almost think you were looking at two completely different countries. And not because of a war, but because of these huge social earthquakes that totally reshaped the nation from the inside out. Today, we're going to dig into three of those powerful shifts. So that really makes you wonder, right? How does a country's identity actually get forged? Well, as we're about to see, it's rarely during the quiet, stable times. It's forged in the fire of massive and often pretty chaotic transformation. All right, so let's kick things off with our first transformation. And it all starts with movement. We're not just talking about a few families packing up their bags. This was a seismic demographic shift that sparked a cultural explosion that, honestly, we're still feeling today. So what was going on here? Well, it was really a story of push and pull. The push factor, the absolutely brutal reality of Jim Crow laws in the South, that was driving people away in droves. And the pull, that was the promise of industrial jobs, of a new kind of freedom waiting in the big cities up north. And this incredible movement of people, it has a name, the Great Migration. We are talking about millions of African Americans moving from the rural South to these booming urban centers. This wasn't just some small trend, folks. This was one of the biggest demographic shifts in all of American history. And you gotta understand, this was so much more than just people changing their mailing address. This was the birth of entirely new cultural worlds. Suddenly, cities like New York, Chicago, Detroit, they exploded into these epicenters of Black life, of art, of thought, on a scale that America had just never seen before. And right at the heart of all this, out of this incredible concentration of talent and community, came the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, this was a genuine cultural flowering, art, music, literature, an unapologetic, vibrant celebration of African American culture that just demanded the nation's attention. And the impact? Oh, it was profound. First off, on a national stage, it instilled this powerful sense of Black pride and identity, a totally vital counter-narrative to centuries of oppression. It also, broadcasted the realities of life, the struggles, to a much wider and, frankly, often unaware audience. And of course, it gave the world jazz, this complex, improvisational, and truly, truly original American art form. So while this amazing cultural revolution is unfolding, there's a political one reaching its boiling point. At the very same time, another movement was fighting to fundamentally change who even got to have a voice in American democracy. It all came down to one single powerful number: 19. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution. The one that finally granted women the right to vote. I mean, this was the culmination of a fight that had been going on for decades. Now, getting the 19th Amendment passed, that was the victory, for sure. But the real story is the ripple effect that came after. See, this was never just about casting a ballot. That one singular right, it unlocked doors. Doors to greater economic power, to political participation. And all of that, in turn, started to chip away at these ancient social attitudes about a woman's place in society. Okay, for our final story of social change, we've got a really fascinating one. It's kind of a cautionary tale, really, about a grand social experiment that had massive, and I mean massive, unintended consequences. I am talking, of course, about Prohibition. Yeah, the source material puts it pretty diplomatically, saying it had mixed results. Let's be real, mixed results is a bit of an understatement. In reality, this was a policy that, no matter its moral intentions, was just deeply unpopular and, frankly, totally unworkable for a huge part of the country. And boy, did this attempt to legislate morality backfire. I mean, spectacularly. Instead of getting rid of drinking, it just pushed it underground. It gave rise to the secret, thriving world of speakeasies. But even more dangerously, by making alcohol illegal, the government basically handed a billion-dollar industry over to organized crime on a silver platter. So you had the 18th Amendment kick off this whole noble experiment, right? But it turned out to be so expensive, so unpopular, and so incredibly hard to enforce that just a little over a decade later, boom, the 21st Amendment comes along to repeal the whole thing. It's one of the only constitutional do-overs in American history. Okay, so let's pull back for a second and try to connect all these threads. We've talked about a huge migration, a political revolution, and this nationwide social experiment. What does it all add up to? I think the most important thing to remember here is that these weren't just isolated events happening in a vacuum.
The movement of people, the fight for political rights, the national debate over social morals, they were all tangled up together. They challenged old ideas, they created new American art, and all together, they forged a much more complex, much more modern American identity.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. History shows us time and again that big social changes, even the ones with the best of intentions, often have these completely unexpected outcomes. It really makes you wonder, right? When we look at the major social movements happening today, what are the unintended consequences we'll be talking about a few decades from now?